Hello, welcome back to my channel if this is your first time here. Hi, I'm Cassidy. If it's not, thanks for always tuning into my videos. Today we have a book haul. Considering it's only been like a month and a half into the year, I have a lot of books to haul. I have a problem. Like, look at this thing. If I just slide it over a little bit, it's taller than what you can see. It's insane. There is fantasy and horror in this. I think it's about a 50-50 split this time for a book haul because I do have Haunted House, 72 Hours in the Haunted House coming up, so I bought a lot of books that I'm not even planning to read that weekend, but it just put me in the horror mood, and so I was buying horror books like left, right, and center, like any way I looked. I was like, ooh, I want that horror book. So yeah, we have a lot of those. Let's do horror first. Okay, let's start with the 3 books that I stole from my sister. So they're being hauled, kind of. They're being hauled until I probably read them, and then they'll go back to my sister's house. So they're not like I bought them. I didn't get them, technically, but like, I'm borrowing them. The first one we have is Dead Inside by Chandler Morrison. I believe that this is extreme horror, and we're following 2 characters, a hospice nurse and a maternity doctor with a horrifically unusual appetite, and together they go on a journey of self-discovery. I believe there's some sort of cannibalism that happens in the story. The next one from my sisters is Where the Dead Go to Die by Aaron Dries and Mark Allen Gunnels. Mark Allen Gunnels. This is about a hospice nurse who people go to die here and live out their final days in peace, and then they are humanely terminated before they turn into like zombies, which just sounds interesting to me. I think, again, this one might be a little bit of extreme horror. And the third book I stole from my sisters is another extreme horror. It is The Slob by Erin Beauregard. This follows a character who grew up in a house that was disgustingly dirty, and it turned out they ended up being a clean freak, which it's like pretty much torture, you know, if you obsessively want to clean and you have to live in a house with slobs, that's terrible. Then there's something about being of door-to-door vacuum sales and coming across a house that like sparks nightmares in her. I'm not entirely sure about this one, but it's short and I'm excited to read it. I also like love this cover. I think it's really creepy looking. So yeah, I'm gonna also guess there's cannibalism or something in this, but I'm not entirely sure. Okay, so those are the 3 I picked up from my sister, and now we're on to horror books that I have bought. A couple of these I did buy for 72 hours. We have 10 by Gretchen McNeil, which I believe is a slasher story. It is on an isolated setting. We follow a bunch of teenagers who go to Henry Island for an exclusive house party, and then one by one they all start to die off. And then there's a storm raging outside, so they can't leave. So I love a good isolated setting slasher. The next one I got is Moon of the Crusted Snow, and I'm going to butcher this author's name, and I'm very sorry. So I'm just not going to say it, and it's on the book. We follow an indigenous community who live in a off-the-grid style community, but not by purpose, just because that's literally the shit that the world gives them, and it's terrible. And so when something happens to the rest of the world and like power goes out, they just think it's just a regular old day for them, and they don't realize that it's happened across the world. And then when the horrors start coming, I believe it's a zombie thingy, they have to deal with it. This is an Own Voices, and I've heard it's really good, and it's like snowy and cold. So I'm excited to read this one. I did buy it to hopefully read for the snowy prompt in 72 hours. I bought this one for the slasher prompt. 2 others I bought for 72 hours are Blanky and Jack and Jill by Keelan Patrick Burke. These ones are just short stories. I've read a short story from Keelan Patrick Burke before. I read Sour Candy and I really enjoyed it. It's really freaking weird, and so that's what I'm expecting from these. Blanky follows a man whose daughter died and has buried her, and one day he hears cries coming from her bedroom, and he goes in to see what's happening, and her Blanky is there, but he buried the Blanky with her. I'm expecting like really weird supernatural horror in this one, if it's anything like what I got in Sour Candy. The other one by Keelan Patrick Burke is Jack and Jill, which is a retelling style story. It follows, you know, the whole nursery of rhyme of Jack and Jill fell down the hill. So we're following Jillian and John, who have lived a horrendous childhood. They've been abused by their father's hands for their childhood, and they escape it, but at one point in their future life, Jillian is forced to look back and recount the trauma of her nightmarish childhood, and it happens a lot within her dreams. So again, I think I'm expecting for this one supernatural, because I feel like that's just what I expect from Keelan Patrick Burke, but also maybe a little bit of psychological in this one, which honestly I think Sour Candy was also psychological, so I'm just expecting weird. I have a couple other Keelan Patrick Burkes that are available on Scribd that I'm excited to read during 72 hours, but these short stories, they were so cheap I couldn't resist them. I bought some more Darcy Coates. I probably will get to some sort of Darcy Coates during 72 hours. I was more buying these to put into my collection than anything else. I bought The Haunting of Gillespie's House, which just follows, it's Darcy's classic haunted house tale, and we're following Elle, who is thrilled to spend a month minding the beautiful Gillespie property over an hour's drive from the nearest town. And the aging mansion is ideal for someone seeking solitude, which is always a great setup to a horror haunted house story. There happens to be a graveyard nestled in the dark woods, and there is some past history with the owner being a tyrannical cult leader, and I'm just expecting a lot of horror-ish vibes to happen. If you are participating in Haunted 72, Darcy will probably count for both cozy and haunted house and supernatural / paranormal for all of her stories. I think that there's only a couple that wouldn't count for those prompts. And then I bought The Haunting of Leigh Harker. This one's a little bit bigger than her other stories, so I definitely don't think this will be the one I gravitate towards in Haunted 72. But this one follows Leigh Harker, whose quiet suburban house was just a sanctuary, and then all of a sudden things start happening, like radio turning off and on, a creature looming through her doorway, handles rattling, nails scratching on doors, things like that, just like creepy like ghost stuff. Her home harbors dangerous secrets, and now that Leigh is trapped within its walls, she fears she may never escape. Do you think you're safe? You're wrong. Yeah, I'm excited to read this one. I also own all of these on ebook. I bought them in a sale, but you can also, now that they've been taken off KU, a lot of them are on Scribd as ebooks. Then we have Loot by Jennifer Thorne. I actually had never heard of this one before. I saw it in the bookstore and I read the back, and then I looked up and I just had one friend who had read it. And this follows a island where they're just like blessed with good health, good gardening, good everything, because every 7 summers 7 people die. No more, no less. And I think that sounds really interesting. We follow a character who is new to this island, and the locals have like hidden secrets and things like that. And I've heard the writing is actually really beautiful. It's quite short, so I could read this in Haunted 72, but I just picked it up because I think it sounded interesting. I'm guessing this will be a little bit of a psychological. The next one I picked up was Slewfoot. I'm kind of annoyed because I didn't realize that my copy was bent when I picked it up at the bookstore, but it was the last copy available, so I probably would have bought it anyways because I never see it on sale there. But this is such a beautiful, like, book. It reminds me of just, like, a coffee table book. See, look at that. You can see that. That's kind of annoying, but whatever. It is what it is. Nothing I can do about it now. Well, I guess I could return it, but I'm not that person. It's a lot of work. I'm just going to read it. This one is a beautiful, people say it's a beautiful tale of like witchcraft and folklore horror and things like that. We are following like pagans against purists, and there is a devil in the woods. Some people call him Father, some people call him Slewfoot. I am very interested in this one. There's also like really pretty illustrations in it. Like the chapter titles have like a really pretty picture. There is a full-size picture in here somewhere too, but it might be a spoiler, so I'm not sure you're supposed to look at it. But I don't know a lot about this one, but I am just like really excited to read it at some point. It's been a lot of people's favorites and I'm excited for it. And then the last horror physical book that I picked up was Ghost Eater by Clay McLeod Chapman. I'm just obsessed with Clay McLeod Chapman covers, and I waited for the paperback of Whisper Down the Lane to come out, and I regretted it so much. Even though I could have bought the hardcover, I still bought the paperback because I waited so long and it's way cheaper. But I regretted it because it has the little flap, and I actually think the hardcover looked prettier, and I'm normally a paperback kind of gal, not a hardcover, mostly because of money. But I decided to splurge and get the hardcover for Ghost Eaters. I actually bought a lot of hardcovers in this haul, and I'm just really excited for this one. This one makes you think it's a ghost story, but I believe it's actually about drugs, and ghost is like a type of drug and people just want to go get ghost and things like that. Clay McLeod Chapman tends to write based on real life events or like things like that. See, this says pop a pill, see the dead, side effects may occur. So it is, I think, a ghost story, but like ghost is the drug. Aaron agrees to a pill popping seance, but the drug has unfathomable side effects, and once you take it in, you can never go back, which sounds really cool. I have this one, and I also have Whisper Down the Lane to read during 72 hours if I want. I know that they're like 300 pages, but I actually don't think that is that long for a horror book, and I kind of want a mix of short books and longer books during that time, so I am very excited for this one. And then, because I like to cover my ebooks and audiobooks as well in my hauls, I'm going to do the horror ebooks first before I move into all my fantasy books. And I did buy a couple horror short ebooks. So we do have Dead Lake by Darcy Coates, which is just a shorter story. It's like a novella. I do think I might try to get to this one during Haunted 72. And we follow a girl in a cabin, I believe, and there's someone outside. I think that this is more of a man horror than like a paranormal horror, but I'm not entirely sure. I also bought Dead of Winter by Keelan Patrick Burke on ebook for this one, and I believe this one follows someone who thinks that there's something not quite right with their snowman, and it's something about Christmas, so it's like technically a Christmas book, but like I'm close enough to Christmas still that I'll read it. And then I picked up Final Girls by Mira Grant, which is a sci-fi horror, and it's about a doctor who created like a virtual reality to help patients overcome like trauma and psychological damage. I'm very excited to read this one. I bought this one for the sci-fi horror prompt on the wheel for 72 hours. I also bought The Grown Up by Gillian Flynn, which I think follows a character who is a psychic but doesn't believe in ghosts, and she's always pretending, and then she goes to a certain house and she realizes she doesn't have to pretend anymore, and there's like a battle of wills and good and evil in it. It's again just another short story. It also happens in a Victorian home, so I thought this one might work for Gothic a little bit. I picked up The Murders of Molly Southburn by Tade Thompson. I'm actually really excited for this one. I picked this one up specifically for the slasher prompt, even though I think it's much of a stretch to be slasher, but I think I would let it happen. The Murders of Molly Southburn follow Molly, who anytime she bleeds, including her time of the month, a twin of her is created, and that twin tries to kill her, so she has to try to kill that twin. I guess it's a clone, not a twin. A clone of her is created, and she has to try and kill that clone before that clone tries to kill her, which I think makes Molly a bit of a slasher, but she's only killing herself, technically. And I think I've heard really good things about this one, and I'm really excited for it. I also bought the We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. This was perfect for a Gothic prompt, and I needed something to read for that, and I'm interested in it, so I bought the ebook for that. And now let's move on to fantasy. I have a lot of fantasies in here. A lot of these were gifts to me as well, so I will let you know if they were a gift. The first one we have is The Empire of Ashes by Anthony Ryan, which is the third book in the Dragoness Memoria, which is a series I really want to get to this year. This series follows a world where dragon blood is like used as the magic and the power, which I think is really cool. This was kindly gifted to me by Roxy, so thank you, Roxy. You're literally amazing, and I don't know what I'd do without you. Yeah, I'm just excited for this one. We have Emperor of Rune by Django Wexler, which is the third book in the Burning Blade and Silver Eye trilogy. This one was gifted to me by Orbit. I received an e-arc of this as well. I've already read this. This comes out, I think, in March or end of February, and I'm absolutely obsessed with this series, and everyone should read it, and it's incredible and amazing. And this follows Maya and Geyer, who are separated when they're quite young, and Maya ends up fighting for the Empire and Geyer ends up fighting for the Revolution, so they're on like opposite sides of the war, and it's a fantasy that has sci-fi and horror, and it's just amazing. And it's also, Rachel always calls gay fantasy Star Wars, and I feel like that describes it perfectly. But, like, don't let the Star Wars scare you, because, like, if you're a Star Wars fan, you'll get it and you'll see it, but if you're not, it does not affect your enjoyment. We have The Witch Hunter by Casey Hollingshead, which this was kindly gifted to me by the author. This one won in the, so it was a submission in SPFBO this year, and the reviewer who had Nomads of the Sea picked this one over Nomads of the Sea to be their semi-finalist. It did end up making it into like the finalists, but I said I really wanted to read this one because I knew the reviewer liked Nomads of the Sea. and the author reached out to me and was like, I know you said you wanted to read it. Do you want to? This is a very small scale, I believe, grimdark that is focused a lot on the character. The next books I'm going to hold up together because we have the Powder Maid trilogy, which I purchased because it is the next Backlist book club pick. This is the next series we'll be reading after Lycanis. So we start with Promise of Blood in April. We'll be reading Promise of Blood. There's a whole video that announces these, but you can also see the dates on Instagram if you follow Backlist Books. The Powder Mage trilogy, I don't really want to explain. I hate explaining books, but because if you're interested in this series, you can read along with us. This follows a world where the Age of Kings is dead. We follow our main character who has just killed the king, and now he's running the empire, and because he can't just leave an empire in ruin after he got rid of their king. So he's using the last of the Powder Mages to help hold the kingdom in his hands against the rival nations, the intrigue, the political scheming that's happening in the story, and all of that fun stuff. This is technically a twist on the French Revolution, and it is a flintlock fantasy, so we will see guns. I know that the author also loves cooking and has put a little bit of that into the magic system. I'm expecting a lot of political intrigue. I'm just expecting a lot of good things. I'm very excited to read this trilogy with everybody. I also got The Price of Valor by Django Wexler. This was a gift from Carrie for Christmas. It just came a little bit later. So thank you, Carrie, so much, and happy belated holidays. And this is the third book, I believe, in the Shadow Campaigns, which is what I plan to read once I'm done Powder Mage, because the Shadow Campaigns is another flintlock fantasy, and I've heard the Shadow Campaigns is better than Powder Mage, but that Powder Mage is good to start with. So I want to read Powder Mage first and then continue into the Shadow Campaigns, and I just needed this last third one. I obviously love Django Wexler. In this haul, I have one of all of his series, because another book that I have to haul for you is Siege of Rage and Ruin, which is the Wells of Sorcery book 3, which is the last one I needed. This was also gifted to me by Roxy, so thank you, Roxy, so much. So I have the Wells of Sorcery book 3, the Price of Valor, which is book 3 in the Shadow Campaigns, and also the book 3 of the Burning Blade and Silver Eye trilogy, all within this haul. So needless to say, I think Django Wexler has become one of my favorite authors. I'm just excited to read anything and everything that he has made. There's also a middle grade series that I plan on trying at some point. But this follows, I don't even know what this series follows, I'm not gonna lie, and I can't read the back of this because it's the third book, but it is his YA series. All of Django Wexler's series have a sapphic relationship, I believe, and this one I just am excited for, and I don't know anything about it, but I'm excited to read it, so there you go. I also have a Lady of Rooksgrave Manor that I got. This is the Literature Book Club pick for February, so I need to read it this month because Steph asked me to guest host this month. This is a reverse harem fantasy romance. People will say it's a monster romance, not fantasy romance. For me, it counts as fantasy romance because monsters are fantastical. And we follow a maid, I believe, who goes to work at Rooksgrave Manor, and obviously there's a lot of fun in it for her because it's a reverse harem, and that's all I really know about it. I just am excited to read it. And then I did get a sci-fi book, but we'll just include it here. It is The Gleanings, which is short stories from the Arc of Scythe. I read the Arc of Scythe a long time ago, and I actually really enjoyed it. I hated the ending. Well, who didn't? But I really, really liked the first book and the second book, and I'm excited to read some of these short stories. And I'm hoping to actually get to this next month and read a bunch of these. I think it should read quite quickly, and there are multiple authors who have written in this, so I am excited to read it because it counts for an R fantasy prompt that I need. If you don't know, Scythe is a YA utopian dystopian series that follows a world where no one dies anymore. We have gotten rid of death, we can heal anything and everyone, so obviously overpopulation is still a thing. Our planet can't handle just an ever-growing amount of people. So there's these things called scythes, and these are these people that go around and just kill people to like deal with overpopulation. And it's a really fascinating story. I really enjoyed it. So I'm excited to read like a short story collection from that world. In terms of ebooks, I have purchased the Collarbound, which I read already. I read it in January, and it was a 5-star read. I loved that book. And it's just like a rich world, and I don't even know how to explain what this book is about to you, so go watch the Booktube Bestie episode if you want to know more. But it like follows a world where I don't know how to explain it. My brain hurts. In this world, the magic happens within your mind, and people go on like mind battles, and we're following our character, who is a collarbound, and what this means is they have a collar that makes them like a slave to a master, but something's wrong with their collar and it's broken, and there's like kind of a mystery and an intrigue, and you're watching this character train other characters in the magic, and there's like an academy, and there's a war going on, and a rift that is reminiscent of like the shadow thingy in Shadow and Bone. And I just really enjoyed it. And then I also picked up The Last Astronaut by David Wellington, which is a sci-fi thriller, and this follows our protagonist who had a ruined trip to Mars, I believe, and it's like a big shame in their life, and they think that they're done with space and NASA and all that other stuff. But when a giant alien object is seen in space, NASA quickly makes a team, and our protagonist is one of the people to go on the team and to like intercept the object. So I believe it's going to be First Contact, and it's going to be very thrilling. I don't believe there was anything I wanted in the Audible sale this month, so I didn't purchase anything there. So this is my entire hauled books for the month and a half that we've already been into the year, which is really sad. Like, I need to not buy this many books. Like, this just can't happen. I need to stop buying books. But I'm very excited for all the books I bought. Let me know down below if you're excited about any of these books, if you have a favorite book that you've purchased in the last couple months, or like a book that you're super excited to read that you've purchased in the last month. And if you're not feeling chatty but you'd like to leave me an emoji just to say you were here, leave me a blue emoji. Any blue emoji. And then if you want to connect with me on other platforms, my Bookstagram, my Book Twitter, my Goodreads, and my Patreon, all linked in the description bar below. Have yourselves an absolutely remarkable day.